the nation and around the world for the remarkable displays of patriotism and unity during the 178th Independence Day celebration. For the first time in 40 years, government of Liberia launches its direct import of petroleum products into the country as over 3 million gallons of petroleum arrived at the free port of Monrovia. US-based Liberian forensic Pomadan medical liquor death investigator Dr. Rockefeller Cooper challenges the official autopsy report on the death of Big Bob Flomo, originally conducted by Liberian pathologist Dr. Benente Coley and Dr. Zobon Kantet in 2021. And away from home, the BBC is reporting that Burkina Faso has considered the death of a Burkinabe activist in custody in Ivory Coast to be an assassination. These the news bulletins post or package onto this presentation of the program. Professor Stephen Talu is seated with the news bulletin. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Oliver, and good morning, Liberians. President Joseph Boakai has congratulated citizens across the nation and around the world for the remarkable display of patriotism and unity during the 178th Independence Day celebrations. In a special message to the nation, President Boakai praised the unprecedented skill and spirit of this year's commemorations, which spanned the entire country and reached the Liberian communities in the United States, Canada, Japan, Australia, Egypt, and other parts of the diaspora. The president noted that the widespread enthusiasm reflects growing confidence in the country's future and reaffirmed his administration's dedication to integrity, reconciliation, and sustainable development. While acknowledging the challenges Liberia continues to face, President Baka called on all Liberians at home and abroad to remain engaged and united in building a better nation. He emphasized the important role of the Liberian diaspora in the country's transformation and confirmed his administration's full support for the upcoming National Diaspora Conference in Washington, D.C. The conference he said will serve as a vital platform to enhance collaboration, tap into diaspora expertise, and align national development strategies with the talents and resources of Liberians living abroad. The president also reminded the nation of the National Day of Prayer scheduled for Wednesday, July 30, 2025, and called on all Liberians to gather in the various places of worship to offer prayers for healing, reconciliation, and lasting peace. The government of Liberia, for the first time in 40 years, launched its first direct import of petroleum products into the country. The move by the government is aimed at making fuel more available and helping to lower prices for ordinary Liberians. President Joseph Boakai on Tuesday launched the fuel import and carry on inspection of the new LPRC storage and testing facilities. Speaking with journalists at the launch ceremony on Tuesday, July 29, the managing director of the Liberia Petroleum Refinery Company, Amos Tua, is assuring Liberians that there will be a reduction in the prices of gasoline on a Liberian market beginning August 2025. He noted that LTPRC is committed to making sure that Liberia continue to have the newest price of petroleum products in West African region. The LPRC managing director is also warning dealers and sellers of petroleum products that attempt to hike the prices of gasoline and diesel will lead to sanctions and penalized by the Liberian Petroleum Refinery Company. Amos Stewart has meanwhile revealed that the shipment of the products marks a significant step towards fulfilling the institutional mandate and responsibilities. He added that the launch of the fuel import is not intended to remove fuel importers from the market, but rather to empower and employ more people at the LTPRC and the Liberian business in the country. A US-based Liberian forensic post-mortem medical legal death investigator that Rockefeller Cooper has strongly challenged the official autopsy report on the death of Big Boy Flomo, originally conducted by Liberian pathologist Dr. Benedict Colley and Dr. Zebon Pate. The initial autopsy carried out in 2021 concluded that Flomo died as a result of high velocity blunt force trauma consistent with being struck by a moving train. However, during an independent forensic examination conducted at the St. Kennedy Funeral Parlor in Banga on Friday, July 25, Dr. Cooper stated that his findings contradicted the early report. According to Dr. Cooper, there were no injuries on Flomo's body that matched the pattern that typically seen in train accident victims. The only visible injury noted was a fracture to the humerus, the upper arm bone. Dr. Cooper's independent investigation was conducted at the invitation of the Foundation for International Dignity, a Banga-based human rights advocacy organization. Finds Executive Director Aaron Jacoli welcomed the investigation and called for a full re-investigation into the circumstances surrounding Big Boy Flomo's mysterious death. Also speaking during the event, Flomo's fiancée Cecilia Saki expressed frustration and demanded justice for her late partner. Big Bob Flomo was found unconscious alone at Sila Metal Liberia's Railway near Maurice Davis Town in the Rob Cratcher community of Kokoya District on November 24, 2021. Following internal reviews, Asila Metal Liberia stated that none of its trains were involved in an accident at the time. The political committee to Henry Costa has called on President Joseph Boakai to implement the concession agreement with the Liberia Traffic Management Incorporated. In recent weeks, the 25 years concession agreement between the government of Liberia and the Liberia Traffic Management Incorporated has sparked a protest in Monrovia from workers of the Ministry of Transport and Commercial Drivers. Speaking in a live Facebook postcast, Costa said the agreement was reviewed by the past administration and passed by the legislature, noting that failure for President Boakai to adhere to the concession could scare away investors from the Liberian soil. Costa argued that the Liberian leader is under obligation to respect contracts entered into by the government, stressing that the contract signed in September 2018 is a law that must be abided by. Henry Costa further disclosed that the Liberia Traffic Management is obligated to employ majority of the employees at the Transport Ministry, alleging that individuals in the opposition Congress for Democratic Change are the Bastor miners via the protest. Liberia's permanent representative of International Maritime Organization, Ambassador Robert Bale, has unveiled Liberia's preparation to host the 8th African Maritime Summit. Speaking in an interview on July 29, 2025, Bale disclosed that the country demonstrated a great global leadership at the last summit in Gaza, something he said led to Liberia being chosen to host the 8th summit to discuss the future of maritime. The Liberian representative to IMO revealed that the summit, which will run from September 30 to October 4, 2024, will cover the provision of jobs for citizens as well as the mobilization of global investment. He highlighted that over 40 countries are expected to attend the event, acknowledging that Liberia is glad to undertake such initiative. The Vice President for Technical Services at the National Oil Company of Liberia says Liberia needs institutional builders who will build the country and institution through education and ideas. Richard Bassi Gia emphasized the need for Liberia to invest in its human capacity, that's capital, particularly the younger generation, to secure a prosperous future for the nation. Bassi Gia made a statement at the program marking the 16th graduation ceremony and the 18th closing exercise of the Kola Foundation Institute in Painesville on Tuesday. According to Bazi Gia, the strength of any country lies in its people, and Liberia is no exception. But he urged them to invest in the youth and prepare them to become professionals who will transform a country. In his remarks, the chief executive officer of the Kula Foundation, Martin Kula, urged parents to instill moral discipline and values in their children, stressing that character formation begins at home. Collins noted that children are investments of their parents, as such, parents should not fail to discipline and guide them. The executive director of the National Rehabilitation for Drugs and War Affected Persons has forwarded a couple of cases to the West Point Ministerial Court against two individuals identified as Jerry Coley and Tete Seaford for allegedly giving a dangerous substance to Coley and identified as Kuche to 90-year-old boy, leading to his death. Retired Colonel Augustine Nangbe, assisted by resident seized the couple, Jerry Coley and Titi Seaford, for drugging the victim. Identified as Freedom Jala around a popular ghetto known as Trench Tower, located at the PHP behind the St. Teresa Convent on Rider Street. According to Kodo Nambe, when the couple observed that the victim was unconscious after taking the coach, the charter a tricycle and pushed him to the Cali hospital, but the hospital reportedly refused to accept him as he was already dead on arrival. Nambe narrated that it was based on such background that he received a tip off and rushed to the scene, apprehend the couple, and transported them to the West Point Magistrates Court. The retired colonel pointed out that the victim was undergoing rehabilitation at his center, but came to greet his relatives during the July 26 celebration. His body was deposited at the John F. Kennedy Hospital. Presidential Press Secretary Kula Fufana has commended the Chinese embassy in Liberia for giving 5 journalists from the Executive Marshal Press Corps the opportunity to participate in a specialized training in China. Speaking during the Executive Marshal Press briefing over the weekend, disclosed that 5 of the Executive Marshal reporters will be leaving Liberia from August 1 to 14 to take part in the training in China, noting that the government look forward for more opportunities. According to her, it is part of the government engagement in for the empower its citizens. She urged the 5 reporters to be focused and return to help others to contribute to the growth and development of the country. National Keke and Motorbike Riders Welfare and Advocacy Organization of Liberia has expressed their concern over what they called police harassment and unfair issuing of tickets by the Liberia National Police through the that's Liberia Traffic Management. Speaking during a press conference in Monrovia Tuesday, the public relations officer of Naka Moore, Ansu Zaza, condemned the alleged disturbance of motorcyclists and drivers by officers of the LMP. According to him, they want Inspector General of Police Gregory Koma to retrieve his officers out of the streets in 1 week. It is closing that failure to do will lead them into a go slow action. And away from whom, Burkina Faso has said it considers the death of a Burkinabe activist in custody in Ivory Coast to be an assassination. Alain Traore, commonly known as Alino Faso, been arrested 6 months ago in Ivory Coast on charges of espionage. On Saturday, the Ivorian authorities announced that for the 4-year-old Traore had taken his own life 2 days prior while being held at the military academy. Burkina Faso's information minister said the government rejects the suicide theory, while Traore's supporters have accused Ivory Coast of carrying out a cover-up for political expression. Blaze News.
Many thanks to Stephen Taluded for the news bulletin. It's a regular feature on Newspoint, a production of the News and Current Affairs Department at Blaze Communications Network Incorporated. Stories will further on today's presentation of the program. President Joseph Boakai congratulates citizens across star-studded nation and word for the remarkable displays of patriotism and unity among them during the 178th Independence Day celebration. For the first time in 40 years, government of Liberia launches its direct import of petroleum products into the country as over 3 million gallons of petroleum arrived at the free port of Monrovia. US-based Liberian forensic post-mortem medical liquor death investigator Dr. Rockefeller Cooper challenges the official autopsy report on the death of Big Boy Flomo, originally conducted by Liberian pathologist Dr. Benente Cooley and Dr. Zobon Kantet in 2021. And away from home, BBC is reporting that Burkina Faso has considered the death of a Burkinabese activist in custody in Ivory Coast to be an assassination. Still ahead, the voices of our newsmakers are packaged onto this presentation of the program. Take a short break and be right back. Thanks for rejoining us. We now take on our first development. The government of Liberia has, for the first time in 40 years, launched its first direct import of petroleum products into the country. The movement by the government is aimed at making fuel more available and helping to lower prices for ordinary Liberians. Speaking with journalists at the launching ceremony on Tuesday, July 29, the managing director of the Liberia Petroleum Refining Company, Amos Dua, is assuring Liberians that there will be a reduction in the prices of gasoline on the Liberian market beginning August 2025.
Expectation about people, but they can be assured. The fact that we are here is about making sure that there is fairness in prices. So hopefully there could be a likelihood for reduction next month, beginning next month. Of course, it might not be huge, it might be marginal, but the entire intention is to make sure that we continue to have the lowest price of petroleum product in the region. As it is now, it's important to emphasize that except Nigeria, right? Yes, and Liberia has one of the lowest prices for petroleum products in the Manu River. It's not possible. There will be sanctions. The president has given us a straightjacket mandate. Any individual who is found trying to honor by the government stipulated price, you hold yourself responsible. Because we will not hesitate, we will go back. First, we will revoke your lesson. If we can take the bold step to bring petroleum product after 40 years, what other thing you will get to?
Amos Stewart has meanwhile revealed that the shipping of the products marks a significant step towards fulfilling the institution mandate and responsibilities. He added that the launch of the fuel import is not intended to remove fuel importers from the Liberian market, but rather to empower and employ more people at the LPRC and Liberian business in the country.
President, I think you saw him, very impressed. He came here in August last year to do the groundbreaking, and he's back now. The project is almost 95, 98% complete. So the president is very impressed. Extremely impressed. Under 1 year, we're able to make sure that we implement this project to reach this far. I can say the first time, but it's very impressive, especially at this entity. So that means we are on budget, we are on target, we are on time to fulfill our mandate of constructing these two very crucially important projects for our facility. So the president was impressed. On top of that, he went and saw the vessel that brought in the historic consignment for LPRC. The first time in after almost 40 years. So this is historic. And again, it's important that you ask this question. We just want to use this occasion to allay the fear of maybe importers or other individuals who think that they are going to be removed from the market. Absolutely not. On the contrary, this is particularly intended for them to be consolidated, for them to get more power, to get capacity, to be able to employ more people, because LPRC is not going into the retail market. It's important to stress that LPRC will start at importation and give the bulk product to importers, licensed importers, legitimate businesses. At the same time, this is about empowering Liberian businesses. The president has mandated us that through this process, we want to create more middle income earners, Liberian businesses. So it is particularly intended to increase the capacity of the great businesses in the sector. Okay, it's a 3.5 million gallon has arrived. In 2-3 days time, this is PMS that on a gasoline. In 2-3 days time, the diesel is going to arrive. That's going to be 7,000 metric ton of diesel. So this is the first consignment. Hopefully, we will continue to roll it out, but these consignments are going to be given out to existing importers. Well, they will be coming from several other countries. So I don't want to engage with the process. Every time the product come, I tell you it's from this country. So it will be coming from several countries.
That's the voice of the LPRC Managing Director, Amos Stewart. They're reviewing that the shipment of the products marks a significant step towards fulfilling the institution mandate and responsibilities. US based Liberian forensic postmortem medical liquor death investigator Dr. Rockefeller Cooper has strongly challenged the official autopsy report on the death of Big Bob Flomo, originally conducted by Liberian pathologists Dr. Benente Cooley and Dr. Zopon Kante. The initial autopsy carried out in 2021 concluded that Flomo died as a result of a high velocity blunt force trauma consistent with being struck by a moving ring. However, during an independent forensic examination conducted at the scene, Kennedy funeral parlor in Bank that his findings contradicted the early report.
After examining and documenting externally, as in from an external exam of the body, and then proceeding internally, as in reopening the body, and I'm saying reopening because the body was opened initially a few years ago for the first autopsy, I can say definitely, without no doubt, that Big Boy Flomo did not die as a result of being struck by a moving train. Okay? There was no injury or injuries on his body that was consistent with that of a person who had been struck by a moving train. I can also say this definitively because I've been involved in train-related death, whether it was suicide or accidental, or if even homicidal, okay? Because any of those categories can indeed exist. Now, I must say this. The only injury that was on his body was the fracture of his left humerus. That is the bone that is within the upper arm. And that fracture was basically 24 centimeters from the deltoid region of the shoulders. Now, what I will have to do is to review the initial autopsy report, which will consist of documentation, what was said, and as well as photographs. Now, I can tell you once again that autopsy report, as it mentioned that he was struck by the moving train, the high velocity impact, which led to his death, is not true. There were no fractures of the long bones, meaning like the arms, the legs. There were no fractures of the chest cavity, be it from the anterior chest wall, the lateral chest wall, as in the side, or even the posterior chest wall from the back. And, so the body was well documented. The challenges faced was just the fact that it's been a while. Of course, the body was embalmed. It's been a while since his death. And so the body had gotten mummified. Okay, so it dried. It was as hard as leather, like the leather belt that you wear. So, but it was a painstaking process. But and so after going to a fine tooth comb, there were no injuries consistent. His skull had no injury, as in no fracture. Even looking into the skull, there were also no fracture. There were no fracture or fractures in other parts of the head or other parts of the body for that matter, apart from fracture to the left humerus, which at this point in time raises concern because that is a very thick bone. Okay, the humerus is just as thick as other bones in the body, like the femur, and the way in which the fracture took place raises concern. At this point in time, preliminarily, I can see that he did not die as a result of being struck by a train. So the final conclusion will be made after reviewing photographs and documents from the initial autopsy.
Meanwhile, France Executive Director Aaron Wakoli welcomed the investigation and called for a full re-investigation into the circumstances surrounding Big Boy Flumo's mysterious death.
The family of Big Boy Flomo have been under distress for too long, and as right institution, we all of us to give rights. For me, I define justice as what people deserve after the due process. The due process have not reached up to the logical conclusion. So the police did an investigation, releasing the matter, and there was a pathology that put on and did a test and came up with a report. And the family rejected that. Because of that, the case had not been proceeded. So in our case, the family says not satisfied, they should be able to find a different person to come and do that test. So as God will have it, we were able to get in contact with Dr. Cooper. We wrote him to come and provide assistance on behalf of his family.
Now, I know it took you a lot to get Dr. Cooper here to do this. You want to tell us
Yes, Richard.
what?
I will consider his intervention as a privilege service. Don't even add money to it because what he have done. I think he did in the United States. He tried not to say that he can provide a service and we should be able to contact him. If you add monetary value to it, it will be meaningless. I'm so gracious that he was able to accept our letter and he was able to come in. And I think the county attorney and the Minister of Justice were gracious. He had to provide his credentials and everything. So it's up to them. If he will face his report to go to court, he will testify as a Liberian to court and he will be able to say why. And it will also be good for the government to take advantage of these people who have been trained to assist people. There's a Republic of Liberia. It's not me. The Republic of Liberia, according to our system, crime is committed against the Republic. So in this case, one of our citizens were allegedly killed. But the whole issue is they say they were killed by a train, right? And in the investigation, I will frankly say this. The mental state on that place, the mental state that has trained, they were never asked in the police investigation as we speak. So the owner took the pathology issue and went. So if the pathology report came to support an estimate from the investigation, what start the police to have heard from the task team? What start the police to have investigated? You know that your train also they were linked to alleged hitting somebody. You don't find that in the police estimate. So where were we going? In my mind, it doesn't matter what they go to court, the state will going to lose this particular case. But I think the state should take this in good faith and re-investigate this matter so that we can have a logical conclusion on this matter.
Also speaking during the event, Flomo's fiancée Cecilia Saki expressed frustration and demanded justice for her late partner.
I only listening to them because after they brought up Bali, they sent their person to do the autopsy. I was not really feeling fine because I knew that train did not kill my husband. And up to now, the result are coming, I'm satisfied with it. So they can find out who did that, how they can see them. I don't want nothing from anybody, but I want joy. Some people are not satisfied the way he died. People been feeling bad. Even as I say now, I still feeling bad for my husband dead. I see him lying now over there, they cutting me, hurting me. I feeling so bad. And the community people feeling hurt, they feeling bad too. Justice for the death of my husband.
That's the voice of Cecilia Saki, the fiancée of the late Big Boy Flomo. They're speaking. Liberia's permanent representative to the International Maritime Organization, Ambassador Robert Wade, has unveiled Liberia's preparation to host the 8th African Maritime Summit. Speaking in an interview on July 29, 2025, Wada disclosed that the country demonstrated a great global leadership at the last summit in Gaza, something he said led to Liberia being chosen to host the 8th summit to discuss the future of maritime. The Liberian representative to the IMO revealed that the summit, which will run from September 30 to October 4, 2025, will cover the provision of jobs for Liberians as well as the mobilization of global investment.
Important because you see, global maritime is a very essential sector of the global sector of the world. It accounts for close to 90% of global trade and commerce. You cannot move goods and services, especially goods and supplies, anywhere around the world, goods and supply anywhere around the world without vessels, with all ships. So take for instance Liberia. Rest is your state, you must transport them in ship. To get petroleum here and goods here in your shops, you need ship. So that happens all around the world. That makes global shipping, international shipping, a very critical, vital, important. All right. Now, it wields a lot of power because other countries of the world. Being the only African country at category 8, Liberia also carry on their shoulder the burden of Africa. And we are not letting the continent down. As we represent Liberia, we represent the continent at category 8 because Liberia is the only country in that room at that level having discussions of such. So pretty much a lot has been done. In the same token, you know very well we are this year, Liberia will proudly, honorably host the 8th AMA Summit. When we went to the 7th AMA Summit in Dar es Salaam, because of the representation that we made, and because of the way we present ourselves, the way Liberia continued to demonstrate leadership at the global level, we were chosen to host the 8th AMA Summit. The 8th AMA Summit will see over 40 African countries. A summit in Liberia. It's going to be a very massive conference. Maybe second to the OU conference in 1979. 40 countries coming here. What we're going to do, discuss the future of maritime as it relates to Africa. How can we harness our potential collectively as a continent? How can we convert our water resources into economic benefits for our peoples in Africa? How can we provide jobs through our water resources, the blessing, the endowment of the water, the sea, the ocean, the riverbeds, the lakes? How can we mobilize investment in the sector? How can we begin to transform our blue economy to economic blessings for our people? So the conference is going to be held from the 30th of September to the 4th of October. We will be honored to have President Boyka give the opening remarks. We're going to have a lot of international guests here. There will be opening remarks by the IMO Secretary General, His Excellency Arsenio Dominguez. He's going to be here. There's going to be heavy power delegation from IMO and the EU and other places. This puts the country, this says to you that our country has been repositioned globally, all right, and we are standing firm to ensure that Liberia serves as the beacon of hope.
That's the voice of Liberia's permanent representative to the International Maritime Organization, Ambassador Robert Baladet, unveiling Liberia's preparation to host the 8th African Maritime Summit. At this time, Stephen Talo is seated again. This time around, he comes in with the passion of life sports. Stephen?
FIFA certifies a newly installed turf at Gompa Stadium. The newly installed turf at the Gompa Stadium has been officially certified by Federation of International Football Association following an inspection and assessment conducted by FIFA licensed pitch inspector Mohamed Khaled on June 20. The certification confirms that the playing surface meets the FIFA quality standard for safety, quality, and performance. The official dedication date will be announced in subsequent time. In women's football in Liberia, Republic FC and the LFA lower divisions league playoff has come to an end after a loss to Tap Tap FC in a penalty shootout. Tap Tap FC, Falconers FC, and Smotan FC are promoted to the LFA Upper Women's Division League. In Africa, Morocco to find protest after Nigeria's Super Falcons clinch 10th WAFCON title. The Royal Morocco Football Federation (FRMF) is preparing an official complaint to the Federation of African Football (CAF) following a trailing but now controversial 3-2 defeat to Nigeria in the 2024 Women's African Cup of Nations WAFCON final. The game played in Rabat was marked by disputed officiating decisions that have sparked outrage across Morocco, particularly concerning the use of VAR. Nigeria's Super Falcons during the 10th title came from a 2-0 down to seal a remarkable win with which left Morocco fans and officials stunned. And lastly, in the summary of the transfer news, done this and that of analysis on Gopsy, Trafford rejoins Manchester City from Burnley. City sources say move of worth 37 million, that's 27 million pounds plus add-ons. Burnley sources put a figure at 31 million. British record. Newcastle in touch with Southampton for Aaron Ramsey. Join the Blaze News on the Spokes edition.
Many thanks to Stephen Talu there for the Passion of Last Post. It's a regular feature on Newspoint who take on more development. Political commentator Henry Costa has called on President Joseph Boakai to implement the concession agreement with the Liberia Tariff Management Incorporated. Speaking in a live Facebook podcast, Costa said the agreement was revealed by the past administration and passed by the legislature, noting that failure for President Boakai to adhere to the concession who scare away investors from the country. Costa urged that the Liberian leader is under obligation to respect contracts entered into the country by the government, stressing that the contract signed September 2018 is a law that must be abided by.
This very Senate knows that it was ratified. Many of them were there. They voted to ratify it. It is an agreement that is binding. And it would be bad for this government to see a legitimate concession agreement and refuse to enforce it. And then some people will say, okay, the reason President Boakai is failing to enforce this concession agreement is because it was done by his predecessor, George Weah. I will not encourage President Boakai to do that. I will never encourage you to do that. You cannot have a legitimate agreement and you refuse to enforce. It's bad for your country. It undermines investor confidence. It's a bad reputation to have that you are a country where investors are not protected under your laws. So absolutely not. This is a legitimate agreement. It should be allowed to come to work, and that is the way it should happen. You can't do that. These things are since when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was in power. We are keen, renegotiate it, review it, and pass it into law. I have here when it was ratified. This is the signature page. Yeah, it was ratified by the CDC administration. Samuel Tuer signed on behalf of the Ministry of Finance. Frank Musa Dean signed on behalf of the Ministry of Justice. George Manuel Weah signed as President of the Republic. Everybody signed. Patrick Sudu signed as Inspector General of Police. Oluwe Gray signed as Acting Chairperson, National Investment Commission. Everybody signed this agreement with these people on what day did they sign? The 3rd of September. They signed on September 11th, 2018. 2018, September 11th. This is when it became law. It was ratified. So President Boakai, you are under obligation as a leader of the country to respect contracts, agreements as provided for by the Constitution. So it is an agreement, and this agreement will be enforced. Now, what you all need to understand is that those of you who think that the people who are protesting because they're all going to be put out of job, that is not true. Under the agreement, the traffic management people have to hire a lot of people.
Henry Costa further disclosed that Liberia Traffic Management is obligated to employ majority of the employees at the Transport Ministry, alleging that individuals in the opposition Congress for Democratic Change are the masterminders behind the protest.
Under the agreement, the traffic management people have to hire a lot of people from the Ministry of Transport. They're not supposed to hire outside people unless those skills cannot be sourced within the current workforce of the Ministry of Transport. They will hire them. They will hire those that they need. But what you need to understand is that there are those who are just making trouble. And not only will they hire them, absorb them to do the exact same thing that they were doing, only this time with better resources, the LTM will pay them better salaries than what the Ministry of Transport is currently paying them. So now you're wondering, you're working for the Ministry of Transport. You now have the option to be absorbed by the LTM to be paid better salaries. Why are you protesting? Folks, you have to ask yourself. Some of them are also saying, okay, we don't mind going to LTM to work there for better wages, but we want to be retained as employees of the Ministry of Transport. How can you make such a request? How can you make such a request that when they hire you, when they absorb you under the LTM and pay you better salaries, and you still want to be maintained or retained as employees of the Ministry of Transport, but you no longer work for the Ministry of Transport? No, you no longer work for the Ministry of Transport. You are now being absorbed by LTM. So people need to ask themselves, then why are they protesting? You work for Transport Ministry. A good number of you are about to be absorbed or have the option to be absorbed by LTM to be paid better salaries, to work on a better environment with better resources and tools, but you are protesting. Why? Because people in a CDC who are receiving 15% from the license plate deal with their treasurer of their party are angry that the concession agreement which they signed into law is about to be enforced or is being enforced by President Boakai. Your government signed the concession in 2018. President Boakai is simply enforcing it after reviewing it and after his Minister of Justice advised him that that the agreement is good to go, it's above board.
That's the voice of the political commentator Heron Costa that called on President Joseph Boakai to implement the concession agreement with the Liberia Traffic Management Incorporated. Finally, from the news stem this morning, newly appointed Superintendent of Magibi County, O.J. Morris, has laid out his vision for development across the county while dismissing speculation that he plans to contest in the 2029 elections for District 3. Speaking at the Kakata Intellectual Forum on Friday, Superintendent Morris reaffirmed his commitment to the county's growth and emphasized that his focus remains on delivering tangible results on the Unity Party-led government. He said development is a major priority on the Unity Party government, and Magibi is no exception, assuring citizens that every district within the county will benefit from his administration's efforts.
And why are you using a rule? You want to pay the rule. I want to investigate. Why are you using a rule and you damage the rule? You want to pay the rule. Let the caucus score, they let discuss while I'm happening. Do that time when you investigate. No, I don't have intention to contest in district number 3 comes 2029. I don't have an intention to contest in district number 3 comes 2029. The president just gave me a job. The one I can focus on doing it. And let me do the one, let me discuss it 2029. Let me do the one, the way I will do the one. Look at it say, we are discussing Magibi projects. This project will be spread. Some of them will be in this one, some will be this one 5, some will be this one 4. So it will be spread. The projects will be spread across Magibi County. They're not this one 3 project discussing. I'm discussing Magibi County projects. So you're going to have that law Magibi County city project. It will not be here, but it will be as soon as the county council approve it through the legislature or through our caucus, and we will approve what will carry. Now we have a Dolotan hospital, and we are also prepared. We say we want to ensure that unfinished projects that other government officials left, we want to investigate what the project will finish. If there are no money to finish it, we should put it in the current development discussion. There be a proof that finish project because money was spent money for Magibi and no use of it. So we finish those projects that are not finished. Then we can not take other projects. But other ones that not finished, we are not helping our own citizens. So we spread it across the 5 districts. Our focus and emphasis in that district 3. It is for Magibi County. I keep the superintendent Magibi County of the president.
That's the voice of the newly Magibi County Superintendent O.J. Morris there speaking. With that, we come to the end of today's edition of Newspoint. It has been a production of the News and Current Affairs Department at Blaze Communications Network Incorporated. Before we go, a recap of our major stories. President Joseph Boakai congratulates citizens across the nation and around the world for the remarkable displays of patriotism and unity during the 178th Independence Day celebration. For the first time in 40 years, government of Liberia launches its direct import of petroleum products into the country as over 3 million gallons of petroleum arrived at the free port of Monrovia. US-based Liberian forensic postmortem medical liquor death investigator Dr. Rockefeller Cooper challenges the official autopsy report on the death of Victor Flomo, originally conducted by Liberian pathologist Dr. Benente Coley and Dr. Zobon Cantet in 2021. BBC is reporting that Burkina Faso has considered the death of a Burkina-based activist in custody in Ivory Coast to be an assassination. I want to say thanks ever so much for your listening role. Thanks to all of our radio listeners, viewers for following our news program. Many thanks to Stephen Tallow was here with the Passion of Last Post and the News Bulletin. Eric Hinen sat at control and handled the technical aspect of the program. Thanks to Conan Rufus, who was behind the camera for today. On behalf of the entire production team here at Blaze Communications Network Incorporated, my name is Oliver McIntosh. I present Good Morning from Liberia. Bye bye.